Good day, dear students. I'm Iqzal Shamratwa. The subject is Integrated Course of Teaching Foreign Languages. Today, we are going to discuss the topic Critical Period Hypothesis. Now, let's look through the outline of the lesson. Introduction, and we will try to define the term Critical Period Hypothesis. Then, we will look through the historical background of the term. And now we will give some supportive studies and findings on this term. And also we have some studies against critical period hypothesis. And then we will conclude the term. First, we will try to define the term critical period hypothesis. What does it mean and why do we need to know this term in the second language acquisition? Because some linguists or scientists say that there is a period that the language learner will have a great ability or great chance to reach to top or to have native-like speech in the period of age, and if they don't begin or if they don't study till this period, they can't reach to the top or to the ceiling in the second language acquisition. So that this term or this period is under debate in linguists over the decades among the linguists and scientists. And what does it mean? The role of age in second language acquisition is increasing and attracting researchers' interests. And first, it was given in the book by Lenenberg, and a critical period hypothesis on language learning was proposed, as it helps to explain how learners process, represent, and produce a second language. And Lenenberg firstly introduces and makes comments on hypothesis. Following this, two possible interpretations of hypothesis offered, namely the exercise hypothesis and material state hypothesis. And the material state hypothesis is supported by initial rate of acquisition and ultimate level of attained among learners of different age, as well as second language acquisition capacity decline in a critical and sensitive period. And we can say that the fundamental difference hypothesis for explaining age effect role in second language acquisition. And finally, the number of conclusions are drawn with respect to the role of the age effect and explanations of age role in second language acquisition. And Braun had defined the critical period as biological timetable during which our first and second language is successfully accomplished without any difficulties. And critical period hypothesis holds that human beings are predisposed to acquire language in early years of life. That this predisposition is lost at onset of puberty around the age of 12. And we can say that Johnson and Newport offered two interpretations of the hypothesis regarding the age effect role in second language acquisition: exercise hypothesis and maturational state hypothesis. And the exercise hypothesis holds that humans have capacity for acquiring languages early in life. If not exercised during the early time, the capacity will disappear or decline with maturation. If exercised, further language learning abilities will remain intact throughout our life. And on the other hand, we can say that critical period hypothesis holds that humans have superior capacity for acquiring a language, and this disappears or declines with maturation. And let's continue. First, the critical period was proposed by Wilder Penfield and his co-author Lamar Roberts in 1959, and it's also become popular or begin to be under discussion when the Eric Lenenberg published his famous book, Biological Foundations of the Language. And Lenenberg says that brain lateralization, in which that is based on the brain activities, because we differentiate two hemispheres in our brain, right and left, and their role in second language acquisition. Now we are going to watch a video about the role of right and left brain activities in second language acquisition. Let's watch a video.
This is a brain. It's one of the most complicated things to exist in the universe. That's no exaggeration. There are more neurons in your head than there are stars in the galaxy. And we understand much more about how those stars and planets interact than we do about what's in our heads. So, since it's such a confusing web of nerves and cells and connections, most of us like to simplify things. And one thing everyone knows about is that the brain is split into two halves, the left brain and the right brain. It's said that the left side is mostly in charge of logical behaviors, such as mathematics, putting things in sequence, language, facts, and so on. The right brain has more creative parts, like imagination, intuition, visualizing your feelings, and all those kinds of things. Because of this, it's becoming a common idea that most people are either left brain or right brain, just like they are left or right-handed. The accountants, lawyers, and bankers are all smart, serious left-brainers. Painters, musicians, and hairdressers are all wild and impulsive right-brainers. But is this really true? Can you have a dominant side of your brain? The answer is no. And your brain is also nowhere near as the two sides are much more similar than we think, and most processes are found on both sides. The two parts do have different functions, but they are not divided up as simply as logic on one side, creativity on the other. To give you an example, it's true the left brain will handle a mathematical equation, but the right will deal with a comparison or an estimate. Both of these are a part of mathematics, so the two halves work together. But when we say the left brain deals with language, it really deals with words and grammar, while the right handles context and tone. That's how you can separate talking to a person from talking to a machine. So where did this left versus right idea come from? Well, it's actually based on the work of a Nobel Prize winning neuroscientist named Roger W. Sperry. He was trying to find a way to help people with extreme forms of epilepsy, and he pioneered a surgery that cut the corpus callosum, which is the biggest connection between the two halves. By doing the surgery and studying the patients afterwards, he noted that there were differences between the two halves. Newspapers and magazines just took this idea and ran with it. But modern research is disproving this theory. A study published in 2013 looked at 1,000 people and used MRI scans to see if one side of the brain dominated for certain functions. But they never found this kind of favoritism. Instead, they saw that both halves work together to perform tasks. This is really because most tasks are more complex than they appear on the surface. For example, when you're trying to recognize an object, there are actually a number of different steps going on. The left brain is looking for details, while the right is looking at the overall shape. In general, the right looks at things more holistically, meaning it takes in the bigger picture, while the left examines the fine print. You cannot say that one or the other is doing the task. They both work together to find the answer. And if we needed any final proof that the left versus right idea is not based on fact, then we have some very extreme examples. It turns out that humans can still function quite normally with only half a brain. In 1923, a surgeon named Walter Dandy pioneered an operation at Johns Hopkins University on a brain tumor patient. The operation, which is known as a hemispherectomy, involved removing half the brain. It was performed hundreds of times in the 20th century, primarily on children who suffered from relentless seizures. Doctors were astonished to find that even their brain memory, personality, and speech developed normally. Hemispherectomies were 86% successful in curing seizures, and most children went on to function normally in school. Of course, there are a few downsides to only having half a brain. Patients lose their eyesight and the
Dear students, that's the end of our video. Now we will continue. And this video says that there is a role of our left and right hemisphere in the learning process, and their role in second language acquisition. And we can say that both sides, left and right, have their own functions, but we can't imagine learning a second language without left or right side. They both play a leading role in language acquisition. For instance, the second language acquisition also. And now we are going to continue our presentation. Now, the Noam Chomsky's role in with supportive ideas of critical period hypothesis and its main ideas we are going to look through. Chomsky says that the children are born with the ability that helps the human to learn a language, and says that every child born with LAD, that means language acquisition device, and that encodes the main principles of language and its grammatical structures in the language learner's brain. And we can't imagine the language learners without any ability to learn or to acquire a second language. And also, we have other linguist, Lenenberg. He says that there are constraints on the time a first language can be learned or acquired. And he says that if the language learner doesn't begin the second language acquisition by puberty, some parts or some aspects or subgroups of the language can't be learned with full mastery. And also, Johnson and Newport did much effort in learning second language acquisition and the role of critical period hypothesis. They say that there is a relationship between the effects of maturation and the human ability to acquire a second language. And they say that verifying or knowing the age-related effect on second language acquisition in the aspect of grammar should be accurate in language learning. And we are going to look through some supportive studies on critical period hypothesis. Now, first, we will look through the two contradictory implications for age effect role in second language acquisition are resolved when observing initial rate of acquisition and ultimate level of attainment in the learner of different age, as well as acquisition capacity loss in a critical and sensitive period, evidenced with investigations on age-related decline in acquiring for a different area of linguistic domains. And in order to look through, or in order to prove the role of critical period, some linguists has done some research. 46 native Chinese and Korean language learners arrived to United States, and their age was between 3 to 39, and they were all bilinguals, as their second language was English, and their speech are learned by linguists in order to determine their knowledge of morphosyntax in the English language. After the study, Johnson and Newport concluded that the success in second language acquisition is entirely predicted with the role of age, and it's closely connected when the second language acquisition begins. An initial rate of second language acquisition varies from learners of different age, and adults are superior to children in rate of acquisition, and older children learn more rapidly than younger children. The study investigated and on English-speaking learners' acquisition that there exists differential rate of acquisition between children and adults. Typically, with regard to the demonstration of mastery on morphological and syntactic rules, the adults did better than children. Such study has pointed out that reflects differences in initial rate of acquisition among learners of different age. And it was found that American English-speaking adolescents and adults performed significantly better than the children after 10 with pronunciation sessions. Quite different from initial rate of acquisition, ultimate level of attainment, namely the stage at which the learner achieves native speaker competence, favors children, not adults. And Thompson has also did some study or survey uh, with Russian-born subjects that immigrated to United States, and the survey people's age was from 4 to 42. And also, in order to look through their abilities in their speaking, they were given different tasks. The first was reading a list of 20 sentences that were intentionally seeded with different English-speaking sounds. The next activity was a reading activity with 160-word passage, and in which that wasn't seeded. And then the last activity was speaking spontaneously for about a minute about their activities they do every day. And Thompson pointed out that the role of age in second language acquisition, and Thompson concluded that the role of age, or the time that immigrants arrived in the USA, can be the best indicator of the accuracy in their pronunciation in English. But Lung doesn't agree with Thompson because he says that the existence of critical period in second language learning can be false. And also he says that the role of age, or the time that language learner begins his second language, doesn't mean that the learner will attain native-like proficiency. And also, White and Greens has done much study in order to determine the role of second language acquisition with the connection of critical period. They have tested 89 speakers of English, which speaks it as their second language. And quite different from initial rate of acquisition, ultimate level of attainment, namely the stage at which the learner achieves native speaker competence, can't mean that generally achieve higher levels of proficiency than those who begin in later life. And the children are more likely to reach higher levels of attainment in both pronunciation and grammar than adults. The study investigated on two age group learners. Syntactic proficiency in English as a second language indicates that the younger age learners received higher proficiency scores than did learners of older age. However, in second language acquisition, either adults have great advantages or children have advantages in ultimate attainment. Disadvantages are all resulted from initial age of exposure to second language. That is, both depend in part on the age which learning begins. In order to judge his ideas, Greens had given different tasks to the speakers of English language as their second language. The first one was question, and it was taken as an interview in which they evaluated their performance in the terms of pronunciation and morphosyntax, also their fluency, choice of vocabulary, and overall nativeness was observed or was checked by this interview. And after checking the speakers or learners' speech, the white and greens said that there is a critical period hypothesis. And also they had some other conclusions after their interview with the speakers. And they concluded that the speaker's speech was indistinguishable with their accuracy and speed, and they had also good ability in written production tasks. Age-related decline in second language acquisition capacity can be evidenced from phonological, morphological, and syntactic domains. As for acquisition capacity decline in phonological domain, that shows the nativeness of the learner's accents in two extracts taken from performance on a reading aloud task and a free speech task. And white and greens also suggested that the learner's capacity for acquiring the phonology of second language acquisition declines with age. With regard to evidence of acquisition capacity decline in morphological domain, the levels of attainment of two age group students in acquisition of the French verb system in Canada. And concerning the acquisition capacity decline in syntactic domain, the investigated learners' syntactic proficiency based on different ages of arrival in the country of the second language. The learners ranged in arrival age from 3 to 39. And these subjects were asked to judge the grammatically different spoken sentences, and the study suggests learners' capacity for acquiring the syntax of second language decline with age. And also, in order to have native-like proficiency, we should begin learning a second language before the puberty. Children who acquire a second language after the age of 5 may have physical advantage, and the phonemic control of second language is physically possible, yet then mysterious plasticity is still present. And it's no wonder that children acquire authentic pronunciation while adults generally don't, since pronunciation involves the control of so many muscles. However, children can sound similar to their second language class fellows very quickly with all cultural background, while the adults, on the other hand, can hardly attain the depths of cultural background. In addition, in the case of second language learning, limited input, language anxiety, language ego, are also main factors that influence the process of second language learning in the classroom. Adults cannot gain the depth of cultural background that makes them able to learn second language as native speakers of a language do. And therefore, adults face many difficulties to achieve native-like fluency because the developmental changes in the brain that affect the nature of language acquisition after the end of critical period. And critical period in different way argues that the adults tend to be more analytical in learning languages than children, who tend to be more holistic. Therefore, children acquire the language as it's formed and produced by others. On the other hand, adults, unlike children, often think of how a construction is formed before using it in a conversation. The impact of critical period hypothesis on first language acquisition doesn't receive conscious of all linguists or classroom researchers. The study on critical period hypothesis proves that adolescents, neither children nor adults, are the most successful learners because they learn faster or beyond their cognitive maturity. And whereas in the case of adult second language learners who crossed the premises of critical period and reached the boundary of puberty period, second language learning process become comparatively slow. And after looking through the different studies on the critical period hypothesis, we can say that some language learners will have the high level of proficiency in their second language when they begin their second language before the puberty, but some language learners will have the high proficiency no matter when they begin their second language acquisition, so that for many years the existence of critical period hypothesis is under debate, and many linguists did many research, surveys, studies in order to explain the role of critical period, that there are many two variables with strong support in, in order to explain there is a critical period hypothesis, but not all of them are true. It depends on the language learner's motivation and attitude towards the second language. And we can say that um, critical period hypothesis can't tackle a second language acquisition, and there is no enough evidence to support the existence of critical period hypothesis, but despite high level of debate, the critical period hypothesis, it also plays a leading role in language acquisition, because we can't imagine, or we can't say there isn't critical period in second language acquisition. And with other factors like the role of age, the role of motivation, anxiety, cultural background, aptitude, attitude, different learning styles, strategies. Also, the critical period hypothesis is important in second language acquisition. And now that's the end of our lesson. Dear students, thank you for being active during the lesson. Goodbye.